Most know that Bitcoin as a concept was released in 2008 to fight against the abuse of the everyday man stemming from lax monetary policies. Blockchain, however, has a history that dates back to 1991. A cryptographically secure chain of blocks is described for the first time by Stuart Harbour and W. Scott Stornetta. In 1998, Nick Szabo designed a mechanism for a decentralized digital currency he called BitGold. BitGold has been called a direct precursor to Bitcoin's architecture. Since its release in 2008, Bitcoin has popularized the blockchain technology that underlays it, ushering in a wave of innovation. While we've seen the rise and fall of many projects, those that have stood the test of time have seen massive growth in both network sizes and influence. One such example is Ethereum, the innovation of smart contracts which would allow for developers to eliminate corporate middlemen that take the lion's share of developer earnings would redistribute wealth. This redistribution of wealth to content creators, artists, and developers would allow for a wave of seemingly endless creation. Blockchains are on the path to revolutionize the way in which humans utilize trust, or maybe the way in which we utilize the lack of needing it. Blockchain technology seems to be the perfect fit for building secure web applications that bring power back to its users. Token economies are being established around ideas that participants believe will positively change the world or their wallets. Despite all the power of decentralized data immutability, blockchains are still missing a fundamental component. Querying data from blockchain run into performance and bandwidth issues. Blockchain's centralized counterpart, traditional relational databases, usually have something called a query language. This is a language that allows database administrators or developers to query that database, hoping it returns an accurate response. This lack of a uniform query language, alongside other architectural issues, created a unique opportunity. One, if seized, the title of Google of Blockchain would be seized along with it. On March 21, 2018, the Graph introduces a decentralized query protocol for blockchains based on something called GraphQL.
GraphQL, a query language for reading and mutating data in APIs. As a backend developer, GraphQL provides a type system where you can describe a schema for your data. In turn, this gives front-end consumers of the API the power to explore and request the exact data they need.
This was a language invented by Facebook and was perfectly suited for front-end developers, but saw use at all levels of development. You see, GraphQL is an alternative to REST APIs. For those of you that don't know the difference, REST APIs are what is traditional in the world today. You request information and it returns data from a database. The issues with REST APIs is that they either provide too little information, known as underfetching, or they provide too much information, known as overfetching, which is wasteful programming. GraphQL allows developers to run a singular query and obtain the exact information required for a particular use case, and attach a lightly integrated relationship to said dataset or query. Essentially, the Graph has built a decentralized network powered by their GRT token, which incentivizes indexing, curating, and creation of GraphQL queries of Ethereum smart contracts. These datasets are known as subgraphs. The Graph would see industry praise and heavy utilization after its launch in 2020. To be clear, the concept of using GraphQL as an API alternative to querying blockchain data underlaid by a token economy was and is an ingenious idea, and the utilization of the network proves that. However, Coronation Day remains. Did the Graph successfully claim the title as the Google of blockchains? Well, the thing is this. Google are the inventors of the things not strings mindset. By believing in this vision and by leveraging graph databases, Google, Amazon, and even Facebook would see massive growth.
Wouldn't it be amazing if Google could understand that the words that you use when you're doing a search, well, they aren't just words. They refer to real things in the world. That a building is a building, and an animal is an animal, and that they're not just random strings of characters. If we can understand that those words are talking about those real-world things, then we could do a better job of getting you just the content that you want off the web.
The way Google is trying to build information about real-world connections is by building a knowledge graph. The knowledge graph is about collecting information about objects in the real world. The object could be a person, could be a book, could be a movie, and many other types of things. For example, for a famous person, we collect relevant data about them, such as their date of birth or how tall they are. We can also connect that person to closely related objects in the knowledge graph.
Let's say you're interested in Renaissance painters, or how about how many women have won the Nobel Prize? By understanding the relationships between things, be it between painters in the Renaissance or women in the Nobel Prize, Google can do a better job of understanding what it is exactly you're searching for.
One of the first features we are going to introduce, which applies the knowledge graph, is a panel next to the web results.
When you have a question to answer, others may have come to Google already to search for the same thing. Google can jumpstart your research process by combining the information that others found useful with the information in the knowledge graph.
All of the collective human wisdom that comes through our search engine, what people are searching for, tells us what are the interesting things to put in our database.
Take Leonardo da Vinci. Let's say you wanted to learn about the most important Renaissance painters. You might search for Leonardo da Vinci because he's the only Renaissance painter you know about. Now, you'll see information right in the search results that helps you explore the broader topic of Renaissance painters. You'll see some of the most famous paintings from that era, like the Mona Lisa, and discover other painters of that time, like Michelangelo and Raphael.
We're in the early phases of moving from being an information engine to becoming a knowledge engine, and these enhancements are one step in that direction.
As we grow the knowledge graph and make it larger and richer, we're really excited at the opportunity we have to understand more of the user's queries, to understand more about the information that's out there on the web, and intelligently connect the two to each other.
Furthermore, it is widely understood that GraphQL is not a graph database. In fact, one expert had the following to say. Fundamentally, there is no relationship besides the fact that GraphQL and graph databases have the word graph in their name. They were designed for two entirely separate purposes. The two simply do different things. GraphQL is the query language used to design and query your company's data in a typical web application architecture. In contrast, graph databases are a specialized type of database to analyze your data and draw useful conclusions. Graph databases usually come with their own query languages. In the case of OriginTrail, this is Sparkle, which is generally more powerful than GraphQL since they were defined to work with extensive schema organization of something called RDF, or Resource Description Framework. RDF is more complete and capable than GraphQL schemas because RDF's main purpose is to provide a system for building completely detailed structures from the meaning of data. Conversely, GraphQL has fewer capabilities. It is also far simpler to learn and use, a result of its syntax being intentionally human-oriented rather than predicate calculus-oriented. While researching, I've found comparing the graph to OriginTrail is like comparing an apple to a very, 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 very large orange. Let's dive. Here are the fundamental differences to see who has earned the title of the Google of blockchains. To dissect this, we'll be breaking this into 5 separate points, each explaining why OriginTrail and the graph are different from each other, of course expressing different strengths and various weaknesses of each. Point number 1. The graph is a decentralized network of GraphQL APIs that allows developers to query data from the Ethereum blockchain powered by GRT. On the other hand, there are graph databases, of which there are 2 types. First, you have RDF graphs, and then you have labeled property graphs. OriginTrail is a decentralized network of RDF W3C compliant graph databases powered by the Trac token and now OTP token to facilitate cryptographic secure data exchange. As a result of leveraging graph database technology like Google, OriginTrail is already building out the world's first decentralized asset search engine, the official Google search bar of Web3. The graph isn't competing with OriginTrail. They're more so competing with whatever data querying languages are being used to query data or with REST APIs. One amazing thing about GraphQL is that it's simple to use and learn, which is exactly why it's taking such a big bite into the market as it relates to data querying languages, which when compared to graph databases are more expensive and are generally seen by industry as more complex. Point number 3. The graph is focused on indexing data from Ethereum. They do have plans to expand into Polkadot as well, however, they only currently index Ethereum blockchain data. OriginTrail, on the other hand, is not focused on indexing blockchain data only, but all of humanity's data and assets. This includes real-world items, Web3 assets, which will eventually include multi-blockchain data. This also means that developers will be able to utilize real-world assets and real-world multi-blockchain data into their applications. Point number 4. GraphQL schemas are significantly less powerful than graph databases. Graph databases are able to detect connections between datasets because of something called inference. The more data in the graph, the more connections and new knowledge might be obtained. Since the graph is a network of APIs and not an actual graph database, coupled with the simple fact that the graph only reads data on the Ethereum blockchain, it offers limited inference on datasets within their network and limited inference in the areas of multi-blockchain data, presenting a huge loss in potential inferences.
As we grow the knowledge graph and make it larger and richer, we're really excited at the opportunity we have to understand more of the user's queries, to understand more about the information that's out there on the web, and intelligently connect the two to each other.
Meanwhile, OriginTrail will be adding blockchain data to its already expanding data pool of real-world assets, allowing for inferences we cannot yet humanly imagine. Point number 5. Traditionally, why developers opt into using languages like GraphQL instead of creating a graph database is primarily because it's usually hard to maintain and very expensive. Usually finding a good knowledge graph specialist is like finding shirtless photos of Ziga. In very high demand, but no one knows where to actually get them. However, due to OriginTrail's architecture, they have made graph databases accessible to the common man. By spinning up an OriginTrail node, now users can utilize the power of a graph database with JavaScript and post datasets for less than the cost of a McDonald's burger. OriginTrail is making graph databases sexy again. Also, I found it important to mention that there are some GraphQL databases or implementation that are focusing on building a standalone GraphQL graph database, like dgraph. So there are some innovations in this space that allows users or developers to kind of get their toes wet into the semantic space. If you do have access to a graph database, of course, you're going to want to be able to utilize that graph database and its full powers. While there is more to mention, we see that the title of Google of Blockchains from an architectural level sides with OriginTrail. And with it being a multi-chain environment and not limited to indexing data from blockchains, it's called the Google of Web3. Not to beat a dead horse, but another expert had this to say. GraphQL gives you only as much as it's able to with respect to querying and graph traversal. To really unlock the power of graph databases, you will need Sparkle. But if you never plan to, and you're not interested in reasoning either, then possibly you should ask yourself if you really need a graph database. So in our case, if you've got access to a graph database thanks to OriginTrail, which you can interact with using GraphQL or even more powerful Sparkle, do you really need the graph?
Yo, this is a TRI zone. We do it for our neighbors like we do it for our own. We do it for the peasants and we do it for the crown. We bring them to our levels so we never looking down. This is a new age classic. The beat bombastic. Your feet you gon' clap it. The hate you gon' stop it. Track you gon' buy it. Them jets you gon' fly it. That Mex you can buy it. The Mexicans like it. Wake up, coming for your brain. You can be great, you just gotta keep saying it. Thinking and doing and walking and smelling and talking and wearing. And this is the way. Backstabbed with red lightsaber. Typically the outcome of asking for favor. Yvonne, baby, do you really love me? She told me that she Obi-Wan Kenobi. Maybe she the only one. Nope, when I bring her to the table like an only son. The prodigal, so my go. Blessed by the heavenly Father for your sabbaticals. My worldview is not that radical. Love thy neighbor as I love thyself. Only grab wealth when it's good for your health. Nothing y'all slam and they better pop stab. Yeah, you know that brings me to crypto. Bitcoin doing big things for the fam, yo. Working for the man, get my success lipo. Tryna put weight back onto my fight. With my itinerary, where do we go? With your Mazatica to Puerto Rico. I'ma buy a villa. do it for our neighbors like we do it for our own. We do it for the peasants and we do it for the crown. We bring them to all levels so we never looking down. This is a new age classic, the beat bombastic. Your feet you gon' clap it, the hate you gon' stop it. Track you gon' buy it, them jets you gon' fly it. That Mex you can buy it, the Mexicans like it. Wake up, coming for your heart. You can be great, it don't matter where you start. We send it for our right, so we hit them with a left. We a brotherhood, so we share what's left. It's about what you do with opportunity. Look into my eyes, for you the things I do for me. You, my friend, have an equal stake in my success, and that's what's great. Look at what I got, you really couldn't lift it. DKG big, you're gonna need a forklift. 1 billion, 2 billion, 3 billion fold. I say KPIs, I'll be taking off on Mars. Staring at the stars, I see the path ahead of me. Buying more track is the future that I see for me. Gotta stack my damn track for the pennies. Now we looking at track, chilling with the Benjis. Ha! If you know what I mean, retirement gon' be quick, unseen. Dollar man, you broke, then we all kings. Put a track stake on the keywords, top 5, so it gon' be top 5 DKG keywords. I'ma be alright.